Okay, so heads I propose to her, tails I don't. Order the buckler and shield and prepare for battle.
Well, welcome back. Week 4 of our series, Divine Direction. Man, it's been a great couple of weeks as we have been going through this series. Over the past 3 weeks, we have talked about some important decisions that have the power to change the story of your life, right? We've said, look, there are some things in your life that God is calling you to start. And you need to take the small step of faith to start something. Then last week we talked about the all big, should I stay or should I go, right? Should I stay or should I stop something that I'm not supposed to do? And so stop or stay is what we talked about last week. You know, those things really can define our story. In fact, we've said a key thought for this entire series is that the decisions that we make today determines the stories that we can tell tomorrow, right? And that's a really important thought. Andy Stanley said it this way. He said it's direction, not intention, that determines our destination. So true. Direction determines our destination. How many of you guys have ever used a GPS? Oh, yeah, absolutely. GPSs are one of the most incredible things. I don't really know how we got anywhere before GPS, right? I understand that there was this thing called a map, right? But I don't know how people really knew where they were at on that map beforehand, right? And whether or not they were lost or not. But with GPS, I have this little phone, and she tells me, because she tracks everywhere that I'm going, right? She tells me, turn right, turn left, right? Turn around, make a U-turn, you've gone too far. I hear that all the time. And sometimes I think Siri gets a little bit mad at me. You ever have one of those, right? Where Siri gets mad at you? Yeah, I'm pretty sure she gets mad at me all the time. It helps me understand my wife whenever she's navigating next to me. I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. If this computer, who doesn't know anything but the directions that I'm following, right, gets mad at me, how much more so does my wife, right? Yeah. This week, I got a little bit fascinated with GPS technology. All right? Did you know that GPS technology has only existed for the last 50 years? And actually, the ability for us as consumers to have it has only been around for about 30, right? I had no idea. And did you know this? That right now, about 12,500 miles above us, there are between 24 and 30 GPS satellites that are making orbit around the Earth. Actually, I read a stat this week that blew my mind. Right now, there are 31 because they're expecting for that one to come crashing down at any point, so they've already put the new one up in its place. How crazy is that, right? So there's between 24 and 30 GPS satellites traveling above us. And not only that, but there are 2 different channels for GPS. There is a military channel, and then there is a consumer channel. I was like, whoa, that is absolutely fascinating. Now, you probably knew this. I kind of knew this a little bit, but GPS works off of a triangulation, right? It has to have 3 satellites. And the reason it has to have 3 satellites is that 3 satellites together gets it down to 1 point. If you have just 1 satellite, you could be within any radius of where that satellite is at. If you have 2 satellites, you actually end up at one of 2 points where those 2 things intersect. But when you have 3, they intersect and it leaves just 1 point where it comes back to. It's like how absolutely fascinating about how that works. Now, I don't know about you, but as I was thinking about GPS, I was like, you know what I really wish? I wish that I had like a God GPS system, right? Something that told me what it was, the direction that I was supposed to go in my life, helped me know exactly where I was at and how to get to the next thing. Something that said, hey, silly, right? Turn left here. That's your left, my right. Hey, turn here. Go straight another 500 yards and then turn. I want a God GPS. How many of you guys would like a God GPS so that you could know exactly where it is that you're supposed to be going? Well, you're in luck because today we're going to talk about those three letters, God's GPS for each one of us. So if you have your Bibles, open them up. We're going to look in Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Now, this chapter that we're getting ready to read is, it's probably in the Hall of Fame of chapters in the Bible. Actually, it's not just in the Hall of Fame, it actually is the Hall of Fame, right? Because this chapter is sometimes referred to as the faith chapter, because it is the Hall of Fame of all of the greatest faith characters in the Bible. And it lists them one after another and gives you a condensed version of their story. And today, we're going to read about one guy's faith story and the story that God did through that. So if you're with me, verse 8 is where we're going to start. And it says this. It says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. And by faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents, and Isaac and Jacob, his heirs with him of the very same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Let's pray. God, I, more than anything, pray for your master GPS in our lives, for that divine direction. I know that most of us that are in this room, God, we desperately desire to know where you want us to go. And God, I pray that today, as we look at Abraham's life as an example about that, that you would help us to understand what it means to go and to be going towards you and becoming more holy as you've called us to be. God, may we pursue you in a way that would serve you. We just give you all of the glory and the honor in your name. Amen. Okay, so before I begin this story, all right, I'm gonna give all the caveats to it at the very front of it, all right? So before I begin this story, please know that I already know that I'm a bad parent, okay? I have fully come to terms and accepted that when you give an 8-year-old a phone, it means that you are a bad parent, okay? So I know that, so you can judge me on that. It's okay. But my story starts with my 8-year-old having an iPhone. Now, let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about why she has an iPhone. My wife and I have slowly begun to allow my daughter to stay at home by herself for small periods of time, 30 minutes or an hour, while we go do an errand of this, that, or and the other. And we came to a realization about something one day, and that was we don't own a home phone. So if there was a problem that we need to get in touch with her, there was no way for us to call her. Or if there was a problem at the house and she needed to get in touch with us, there was still no way for her to call us. So we caved. We gave in, and we gave our child my old iPhone 6. We've got a new line so that we can take advantage of the AT&T deal for buy a phone, get a free phone. Did all of that and gave our child a phone. Well, you know it's going to happen. Even though you put the rules in place that the phone is never supposed to leave the house, one day it did. In fact, this day was just a few weeks ago on a Sunday right here. Now this summer, if you were here with us, our kids were in service with us as we did the At the Movies series. A lot of fun, had a good time with that series. And so my daughter, in her mind, had a great reason for bringing the phone. She's like, I want to be able to read the Bible on my phone as Daddy's preaching. Oh, it warms a daddy's heart, right? So she brought her phone with her for that purpose. And as it would turn out, if an 8-year-old takes a phone somewhere, she left it. We got home that night, and we began to ask her for her phone so that we could put it on the charger. And she said, I don't have my phone. We said, where is it? She said, I don't know. So we did what any technologically savvy person would do. We went to Find My iPhone, right? And we looked it up, and Find My iPhone showed that her phone was here at the school. Well, that confirmed what we kind of thought already. And so the very next morning, she and I got up and we came over to the school to find the iPhone. We began to play the sound on it, right? Ding, ding, ding. Where is it at? And we're traipsing all over in this room looking for it. Can't find it anywhere. That particular Monday, there were some teachers that were here. And so we asked a couple of teachers around, hey, by any chance, did you happen to see a cell phone? No, but you ought to ask Miss Kirby at the front office. And so we went and asked Miss Kirby at the front office, have you seen a cell phone? We think we left one here yesterday. No, we haven't seen one. Let me go look in Mr. Bogart's office just in case he happened to do it. And so we said, great, well, we'll play the sound on it. So if it's in there, like it'll make a sound and you'll hear it and you'll just know. And so we pull it up and we play the sound. And as I'm looking at it, the GPS got a little bit more accurate. And instead of being on this side of the campus, it showed that it was out in the parking lot. Our trailer, which we pack and unpack every single week to set everything up for church, happened to be in the parking lot. Oh no. You can see where this is going, right? That phone is buried in that trailer. It happened in the midst of all of the cleanup and packing up. Somebody must have grabbed it and put it in one of our boxes somewhere, and we're going to have to go through that entire trailer to find this phone. So I take Addison outside, and as we're going out, the PTA is taking out the popcorn machine, the same popcorn machine that we used every Sunday to have popcorn in here, and the boxes of popcorn, and I helped them to load it all into their car, and then we made our way on out to the trailer. So we're in the trailer digging around, I'm playing the sound on it, and of course, as we're trying to play the sound, we have the yard crews from everywhere doing all of the yards back here, and the blowers and the mowers and the tree trimmers are all going. And all you can hear is, you can't hear anything else. Finally, they take a break and we're playing the sound, and there's no sound in the trailer. Oh. And I look down, and the GPS has moved again. Now the GPS shows that it's over in the fairways. Oh no. We just loaded up the PTA car and all the popcorn stuff. Maybe her phone was in with that popcorn stuff, and we just didn't realize it. And I just loaded it into a vehicle that went driving off. And so I began to follow where the GPS was taking us, and I drove over into the fairways, and it stopped at somebody's house. So, good dad that I am, got out of the car, went up and rang the doorbell of this random person's house. But the GPS on the phone has stopped. I'm not so sure the lady on the other side thought that I was being a great dad, because she didn't even open the door to talk to me. She talked to me through, I don't even mean like through the screen door, I mean through the door. What can I help you with? Hi, my daughter has lost her phone, and I'm looking for the PTA president. And, well, I don't know who she is, and she doesn't live here. I know, but the GPS says, and she's like, we don't have a phone here. And I was like, okay. So I went back in the car, and you can imagine how not happy of a dad I am. I've spent a couple of hours at this point looking for a phone that I have now resided to myself that is never going to be found. Never going to be found. And my daughter knows that I am fuming mad. Like, she's just not even saying anything at this point, because she knows that it's better just to remain quiet than to try to say anything at this moment with Dad. And so we set up on her phone the I'm lost alert, right? And I'm like, great, her phone is probably dead by this point, and so it's probably not even going to matter. But maybe by chance, somebody finds it, plugs it in, and when they do, it will say, please contact, and I put my number on the phone. Well, I had some more errands to run, and I was not about to allow my daughter to stay at home by herself. Number one, because she didn't have her phone. And number two, it was punishment that she had to stay with me while I was feeling mad for the rest of the day. So we gathered up the few things that I needed to make my trip down the mountain, and I called my wife to appraise her of the situation, and she said, I know. She said, I've been looking on my phone all day long, and she said, it's gone dark, so I assume the battery has died on it. I said, I know, I assumed the same thing. I just can't believe it. I'm so mad about this. And so we're started to head down the mountain. All of a sudden, the phone comes back to life one more time. And it provides one more signal, one more time. I'll have to finish the story later. I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. Listen, I promise you it was an uncomfortable situation. The entire morning, it was uncomfortable for my daughter. It was uncomfortable for me. And it was certainly uncomfortable for the lady who I randomly knocked on her door to ask her if she had some phone, like in a box somewhere, that she had no clue about what it was that I was talking about. You know, Abraham's story was pretty uncomfortable, wasn't it? Here it was, Abraham was enjoying his life. And all of a sudden, God comes to him and says, Abraham, I need you to go. I need you to go. I want you to pack up all that you have and move from the place of Ur to the place that I'm going to tell you where to go. I'm not going to tell you where that is yet, by the way. I just need you to go. If you're taking notes with us, the first letter in GPS is the letter G. G stands for go. And if you want to go somewhere else, the first thing you have to do is leave where you are. If you want to go somewhere else, you have to leave where you are. Abraham had to leave what he knew. He had to leave all of the security and take a step in a totally different direction. You know, almost always, to step towards whatever it is that God's calling you to, you have to leave something behind. Think about it like a child that's just learning to walk. When they're learning to walk, the thing that they do is they pull themselves up on a couch or a table or whatever is there. And they'll reach out as far as they can reach out. But they don't dare let go of that table, that security, whatever it is that they're holding on to. Because if they do, they fear that they're going to fall. But eventually, for them to be able to go, what they're going to have to do is let go of what's behind them to head in a different direction. You know, that's so true for you and I. When God calls us to go, it's very likely that we're going to have to leave something that we might love a whole lot. We're going to have to leave something that gives us our security and head towards another thing. You know, it's been said before that if you're not going, you're not growing. If you're not going, you're not growing. In fact, the converse is also true. You're not growing if you're not going. You know, Jesus' last words to his disciples. He's set them all down. He's getting ready to go back to heaven. It's last and final instruction to be able to give to them. And he says, Matthew 28:19, he says, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." You know, I love this passage for a couple of reasons. First of all, it reminds us what we're always supposed to be about. We're supposed to be about making disciples, right? God doesn't call us to go somewhere with a purpose in mind to make us rich. God doesn't call us to go somewhere with a purpose in mind for us to become powerful. God doesn't send us somewhere for us to be lonely. God always, as part of his purposes, when he sends us to go somewhere, it's for the purpose of making disciples. That's what a Jesus follower does. Here's the second thing that I love about this. The command in this verse is not to go. No, wait, if you're like me, you're like, time out, hang on. I thought you just said that the G in God's GPS is go. And now you're telling me that this great verse which says go and to do something, that the command is not to go? It's not. Go is actually a participle. It means as you are going, do this. Make disciples. You see, it's an understood that you are going, because you cannot be growing if you are not going. You cannot be going if you are not growing. It will not happen. It's understood. It's a part and fact of life that you will be going. So the G in God's GPS stands for go. And the P stands for pursue. If you're taking notes, here's the second thing I want you to write down. Pursue what is true, because that's all you can do. Pursue what is true, because that's all that you can do. Look back at our Hebrews passage for just a second. It says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going to go. Listen, Abraham is not commended just for going. That's not why he made it in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame for faith. No, he's commended for the obedience of going. New American Commentary said it this way. It says the word go and obey are inextricably linked and cannot be separated. The words go and obey are inextricably linked and cannot be separated. Listen, I want to make you a guarantee. I don't make very many guarantees from up here, right? I don't make very many guarantees because I've seen enough, right, to know that anything that I could possibly guarantee you, my God is big enough to change it. All right? But here's the guarantee that I want to make. If you are not pursuing God, then you will almost certainly miss his call to go. One pastor said it this way. He said, your capacity to receive is based on your hunger to pursue. Your capacity to receive is based on your hunger to pursue. In other words, if you're not chasing after God and his heart, then you will miss what he wants you to do and where he wants you to go almost every single time. Abraham didn't know where God was calling him to go. He had no idea where it was. But he packed up his bags because he knew the call was to go and because he was all about pursuing God. He was about pursuing where God was at, what God was doing, and so because of that, he knew that he had to go. Think about it for a second. Abraham had lived in Ur for his entire life. His entire life. His family was there. His wife was there. They had been married for like 40 years. And by the way, they didn't have any kids. No kids whatsoever. And then one day, God says, Abraham, I want you to go. And then he says, here's the promise that's attached to that go. I'm going to turn you into a nation that will bless all other nations. Now, I don't know about you, but if Abraham was in a jam, right? If like everything was bad where he was at, like I can totally understand this move then, right? It probably would go something like this, like, God, if you'll just help me out in this moment, I'll do whatever it is that you want. You ever been there? Ever said that? Oh yeah, there were many a test that I've had. Thank you, Ben, I appreciate that. Many a test where I was like, God, if you'll just please help me with this test right now, I'll do whatever it is that you want. You know what the problem with that kind of promise is? They never stick, do they? They never stick. You know why those never stick? Because the promises that we make don't change us. But the promises that God makes change us. The promises that we make never change us, but the promises that God makes does. That changed Abraham's story. In fact, before this moment of obedience, Abraham's name was Abram. His name was Abram. Abram of Ur. What a great name, right? And when he chose to be obedient and go, God changed everything for him. And his name became Abraham. And now, when we tell the story about Abraham, he's included in the names of who God is, right? He's the God of Israel, the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham. Prior to this moment of pursuit, we didn't have that story. Look with me at verse 10. It says, by faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. You know, other translations say this. They say that he lived as a sojourner or as a foreigner in the land. Now, there are some experiences that I've not had in life. I have never been a foreigner in a different land. I've never been an immigrant in a whole other country. But I've watched, I think probably you have watched over the last several years, as that story of immigration and refugees has probably started to reshape what we think about living here in America. We are incredibly blessed to live here in America. I don't want to get all political about refugees and immigrants, but I want to make an observation about something that I've seen about most of the immigrants who come to our country. They work incredibly hard. You ever notice that? They work incredibly hard. And most of them are not afraid to start at the very bottom. And most of them have no desire or design to try to work their way to the top. Because they're not entitled. They feel like I don't have any rights. In fact, what I'm here to do, because I'm getting the blessing of this great country that I'm in, is to serve and to do whatever it is that I can to make this country great. That's a prevailing thought process across a lot of the immigrants that I visit with and have talked with and have come across and have watched and observed. And that's the same sort of attitude that Abraham seems to have taken on as he entered into this foreign land. He has this incredible promise from God about who he's going to be and what's going to happen. God has told him, I'm going to turn you into a great nation. And I'm going to give you all of this promised land. And Abraham could have walked in and been like, look, peeps, you all need to get out of here because this is my land, because my God said so. And instead he comes in this incredibly humble position, and he begins to serve the people that are around him. He lives as a foreigner in that land. So if you're taking notes, the G stands for go, the P stands for pursue, and the S stands for serve. Go, pursue, serve. All right, some of you are probably wondering if I ever found that cell phone, right? I left it hanging just a little bit. So the cell phone came back on. And it pinged one more time back over here at the school. So I turned the vehicle around, and Addison and I came back over towards the school. And for some unknown reason, actually it was known, I was like, well, let's just roll the windows down and maybe we can just drive around, over and around the school and see if, by chance, we can hear the phone. And so we came down the road right over here, windows down, and we played the sound. And all of a sudden, ding, 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 I heard it. It's the first time that we'd heard the sound. I was like, are you serious? And then my daughter said, Daddy, I think the phone's behind us. I said, what? Wait, what? I played the sound again. And this time we rolled the windows in the truck up. Ding, 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 ding. Really nice and loud. Because the phone was sitting in the back seat of my truck the entire day. Now, here's what I had forgotten in the midst of all of this anger and angst is that we had found that the GPS on my phone did not work right. In fact, there's a great video from about this time a year ago where Pastor Caleb and I are trying to give away a free Nintendo Switch to a family that lived in this neighborhood just right over here. And we could not find the house because my GPS could not figure out where we were at, and it kept sending us in wrong directions all over the place. And in our pursuit of things, I had forgotten about that. You know, sometimes in our GPS, we get the wrong S. We go and we pursue, and instead of serve, we throw in the wrong S of self. And what happens is that we end up in a jumbled up mess of not knowing which directions that we're supposed to go, or going off in the wrong places, chasing the wrong things, because we've got the wrong S. I love this verse describing Jesus in Matthew 28, or 20:28. It says, "The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And as a result, he gave his life as a ransom for many." Abraham and Jesus both understood that they were to be contributors, not consumers. Contributors, not consumers. The message around us is always, fill me, fill me. And God says, no, the message should be, fill them, fill them. Perhaps you've heard this illustration before, and if so, I want you to know it still applies. But in Israel, there are two different seas. There's the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Both seas are fed by the same river, the River Jordan. One sea is filled with life, has more fish than you can ever imagine. In fact, it has entire populations of people who make their industry off of fishing that lake. And the other is dead with no life in it. And the question becomes, what's so different between those two lakes, between those two seas? And the answer is there's only one thing that's different. One of them has an outflow and the other doesn't. You see, the Sea of Galilee has the river continue on out of it, and it continues to give on down the way. But the Dead Sea is at the lowest point, and there is nothing that feeds out of it. And it just sits there. You know, a good friend of mine says this. He said, God did not create us to sit, soak, and sour, but to serve. God did not create us to sit, soak, and sour, but to serve. You know, a sponge is an incredibly useful tool. If you take and you dip it in the water and bring it out, you can clean over and over and over again and put it back in the water and rinse it and squeeze it and clean again. But if you take that same sponge and you put it in the water and you just leave it there, before long, the sponge begins to grow sour and grow mold on it, and it becomes useless to clean with. God says, I don't want you to be a spiritual consumer. I want you to be a spiritual contributor. That's what he has called us to do and to be. The church doesn't exist for us. The church exists for the world. Amen? The church exists for the world. God is calling us to serve. He calls us not just to serve in the church. The serving in the church is incredibly important, and the people who serve here every single week, they come in, they set up, they put up all of the drapes that it takes, and the bases that are there, and the sound equipment, and the video stuff, and all the things that are back there. They set up over in the kids area, and then there's people that every other week serve over in the kids area so that the kids can play and dance and have a good time and learn about Jesus. And then there's those that serve over in the nursery area, and they're there loving on those kids and telling them God loves you, because we want them to know that God loves them. Listen, they're not doing it because of them. They're not doing it because of us. They're doing it because of them, the mission, the M, right? They're doing it because they're hoping that one day their friend will come and hear the message of who Jesus is and how he transformed not only their life, but can transform their friend's life. They're praying for that person. They're praying for a family member to be here one day because they want them to hear the message. And so they serve because it's a spiritual act of service. Check this out. Romans 12:1 says this. It says, we are to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. A living sacrifice. Look, those people who serve and do that, they don't do it because of any other reason than it is a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice, but they know that that is worship to God. It's a way of saying, God, I love you so much, and I care so much about those that are in my community that I'm going to serve. Somebody once pointed out to me that we call this a worship service. And they said the reason we call it a service is because our act of those of us that are here in our body of this believing unit, right? Our job is to serve and invite others to come in and let us serve them. I was like, wow, what a powerful thought. If every week we walked into the church and said, how can I be of service? Because I'm hoping that somebody's husband is coming for the very first time today. Because I'm hoping that somebody's neighbor is coming for the very first time today. Because I'm hoping that my friend is coming for the very first time today. And I hope that somebody else serves them with me so that they can clear away all of the garbage so that God can transform their lives in a radical way. Because he can and he wants to. But listen, service doesn't only happen inside of these walls here at West Star. We are not called to be the church that just meets on Sunday at West Star Elementary School. That is not who Jesus called us to be, and that is not the solution that a dead and dying world around us needs. They need a church that is willing to be a church all week long. That says, how can I serve? God's GPS of go, pursue, and serve, as you are serving, it will reveal not only who you are, but it reveals who God is. And as God reveals to you more about who he is, you're going to know more about where he wants you to go. And it begins to develop that triangulation system so that you can know right where you're at and right where he wants you to be. Listen, there is no better place to grow than through serving. Some people say, what I really want is I want to go deep in the Bible. What I want to say to those people, yes, that's good, but you know how you really, really get down to the dirt of who God is you get alongside of some kids and serve. Let them ask you some questions and see if you're ready. Because God has not called us to be spiritual consumers. He has called us to be spiritual contributors. It's those moments. It's those moments when we choose to serve someone else that God rewrites the entire story of our lives. And it not only becomes the stories that we tell, but it becomes the stories that other people tell, not only about us, but about our God. Let's pray. God, I desire to have great stories told about who you are. God, I want my life to be something that you can use, work in my life to transform me so that I can be humble enough to do this. God, but I also pray that you would work through me. You work through me to serve other people. God, you know, this week as I was reading Craig's book, as he said that it was not about his vision, but it was about him serving the church. God, that was a bullseye in my own heart. Because what we're doing here is not about my vision, but it is about you and about me serving those that are around us here. And I pray more than anything that I would be able to serve, that I would pursue you in that sort of way as I'm going. For some of you that are here, you're already serving. I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you for what you're doing, for your heart to be a spiritual contributor. For some of you, you're just in your first couple of visits, maybe even your first visit here. I just want to challenge you to hear what God is saying, to hear his challenge to you about what it looks like. But some of you, if you're honest, you'd say, you know what, I've not been pursuing anything about God in my life. And I'm just going through doing my own thing. And sometimes I look up and realize I'm in a jumbled up mess. If that's you, you say, you know what? I need to get a course correction. At the end of the message, I'll be in the back. I invite you to come back, talk to me, and say, Charles, I need a different direction in my life. I'd love to pray with you about that, share with you about what Jesus says about that, about how we can get on the right GPS. God, again, I thank you for this message today. I know you challenged my heart with it. Pray that you would use it in a mighty way as we lean into our community to share with them about the hope that you have for them. Just give you all of the glory and the honor in your name.